All right, we have 16, we have a quorum, so we'll get started. I'd like to call the meeting to order, start by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you guys all for coming. I know it's really nice outside, so we'll try to be as quick as we possibly can tonight to get us out and back home. So, previous minutes. Sean sent me the minutes over this morning. However, one of the attachments that were labeled as previous minutes were not the minutes. They were letters that we'd sent out that we'll talk about in a minute. So once Sean gets access, we will send the meeting minutes out for March's meeting. So we don't have them out yet. Correspondence. In our last meeting, we as a council decided to oppose Part S in its entirety. I wrote a letter and sent it to the Commissioner of Health, Director, the Governor, and our local elected officials in Niagara, Orleans, and Genesee counties. It was received. I don't know what was done with it. I tried to craft a letter where we spoke about things that we highly opposed, and then spoke about things that were well received, so not just to be a bashing letter opposing the whole thing, talking about things that we liked or that we would potentially like to see changed or tweaked. I'll talk a little bit about in the next few minutes about Part S and the changes that came about of it in global. So correspondence that was sent out. Sean, I don't believe we got anything in the mail related from that. We got no other emails as well. We'll get started with the chairman's report. The majority of the conversation that happened in the CMAQ-REMSCO meeting in May was related to Part S in the governor's budget for EMS. And we'll talk about some of the things, but the main things that came out of that in the governor's budget, there's been an increase in power at the CEMSCO and also the REMSCO, so us. So keep in mind that we're gonna have a lot more responsibility and work to do over the next couple months, and I'll touch base a little bit more on that in a few minutes. Part of the work we're gonna need to do is we're gonna have to work regionally and statewide to create and develop performance standards. There are about 12 things that we need to look at from a REMSCO standpoint that we need to start talking about performance standards. Luckily, the CEMSCO is going to take the majority of that work on, but with input from the REMSCOs. So after this meeting, I will send out an email to everybody soliciting feedback. I know most of you, or all of you, should have received an email from Director Greenberg discussing performance standards and what they like to see in each of their counties. If you haven't gotten that, I will forward that out. Mike, can you forward that out to the listserv for Big Lakes? So Mike will send that out for us. Also in there was recruitment and retention, a section of that. Mental health and wellness training and activities for first responders. And ambulance volunteers are now going to be able to participate in the New York State healthcare plan. As of today, I still don't know what that will look like. I don't think that the state will have any information on that probably for the first 6 to 12 months relating to get volunteers on ambulance and volunteer ambulance corps onto the New York State healthcare plan. I don't know, John, have you heard anything related to that? I don't know if I haven't heard anything. I don't even know what it looks like. It's just in the budget. So I don't know how they're gonna quantify it. I don't know how they're gonna qualify it. I just know it's in there, and at some point we'll get notification that of how to implement it, I suppose. I don't know if it's gonna be on a county level, a municipal level, a state level. I have no idea. So we're kind of in the dark on that. Bylaw tag for the CEMSCO. We were going to vote in May, however, prior to that, the chairman received comments from the Division of Legal Affairs on proposed bylaw changes. So he created a secondary tag to review those recommendations and to implement changes and implement recommendations as necessary to make the bylaws compliant, make the Division of Legal Affairs more happy. So hopefully we'll talk about those in the September meeting. Director Greenberg, from his staff report, discussed Part S. Thanked everyone who provided feedback. Talked a little bit about the expansion of roles and responsibilities for SEMSCO and REMSCO, which we'll talk about now. So basically, going forward, the plan will be, at least for now, is that starting in July, well actually at the end of this month, there are 4 committees that have to have at least 2 performance recommendations submitted, and then basically work to develop them through July and start to roll them out for August or bring them forward to the state for review. What does this mean for us? Basically what it means is that all agencies now are going to be on the same playing field, whether you're commercial, for-profit, hospital-based, county-based, fire department-based, volunteer-based, any other sort of ambulance corps. There are going to be performance metrics that the state will look at to help to identify underperforming agencies, which the REMSCO, which is us, will be notified of. We will then, as a REMSCO, have to take some form of action on those agencies, whether that be to work in conjunction with the Bureau to talk about the performance, how can we improve performance, what can we do to offer our assistance, where are they struggling, identify them much sooner so we don't have agencies continuously close at midnight without notifying anybody that they're going out of business or not able to respond to calls. Or to have certificates of needs where they respond to 1 call in a primary coverage area in a year time frame. So just be prepared. Again, I don't know what that's going to look like because it's from a systems perspective, so operations, from a recruitment retention standard, from a training and education standard, from a safety standard. What else? You remember? Mike, you remember?
I can pull the list.
By Mike's pulling the list. There are also, and at the Niagara County meeting, John, I talked to Mark a little bit about this. There are also performance standards related to PSAPs going forward. So Genesee and Orleans County, just be prepared that not only is it in other sections of the governor's budget, there's also a health component now related to what those performance standards will look like. I don't know what they're going to look like yet because nothing's defined, but the goal is to try to create at least 2 standards for each section and try to get them rolled out and start to measure them or quantify them by the end of this year. So that
From the dispatch perspective, they're looking into, if it's a New York State accredited agency, all they're going to roll in and pair it with that instead of trying to create a whole other standard. But it's created in a silo. Now you got to try to compare them in a silo.
Well, and that's the problem. I don't know how familiar with many of the PSAPs locally. There are so many different accreditations you can have. You can have well, from an EMD perspective, you can have EMD, and then you have APCO. You can also have, you have the Sheriff's Dispatch Association, you have the 911 Center Association, numerous other accreditations that a 911 Center PSAP can get. Especially in our region, not so much in Niagara, Orleans, and Genesee, but regions just south of us, like Erie County, has many PSAPs. So we're a little bit more fortunate that our PSAPs will hopefully not have to undergo so many growing pains. But the goal, like I said, is to measure those and use those going forward. So just kind of be prepared for that.
Food safety, emergency vehicle operations, general operations, planning, training, onboarding, workforce development and engagement, survey responses, leadership, and any other standard metrics determined by the SEMSCO.
The other thing too is, we're going to start with a 2, so we're going to try to build a foundation from the SEMSCO level. But this will be a living document. Every year, performance standards will be added and start to be measured. Don't be surprised if some performance standards come off if they're found not to be quantifiable or worthwhile or working to identify agencies that are in trouble or high-performing agencies. So some of the things that I can think of in mind for, at least from a general operations or systems perspective, is we need to start understanding and trying to quantify first call reliability. Far too often, EMS, we like to talk about margins or gray areas, but let's just at least focus on the first call. If we can be highly reliable on that, then mutual aid other entities to take that second and third call that happens in an area, start to become more worthwhile, and you're not burdening the overall system. Right now, we hear it day in and day out. A primary agency gets called out, they don't respond. Secondary agency, mutual aids into the, we'll use mutual aid loosely here, but mutual aids into that community, and then the community where the mutual aid unit is responding to help out gets a call in their area. They're then calling in a mutual aid company to cover that call, and it just becomes a trickle down effect where if we could just build first call reliability, we wouldn't have as many problems as we probably see today.
That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because if you take that first company out, somebody else has got to answer the calls. We have X number of people, X number of machines. If we take one out, it's going to put the burden on the surrounding territory.
But we're talking about first call reliability in your primary coverage area.
But if we take that first company out because they don't make the standard, somebody still's got to, in that area, still got to answer the call.
So it's not taking them out necessarily, it's trying to work with them to improve before they're either lose their agency certificate, trying to identify ways, pool resources with other localities that are performing, and we're not trying to recreate the wheel, we're trying to steal from people that are high performing and bringing those in to create a better performing system. The system in New York State is completely broken across the state. But when we're talking about first call reliability, we're talking about the primary agency taking that primary call. Secondary, tertiary calls happen. But if we can be reliable, 90%, 95%, 97% for that first call, creates less of a burden on the surrounding area, so when those calls come out in those areas, they're able to respond to those calls. And that's just something that's being tossed out. It's not something that's going to be in there, but there will be some performance metric on there, probably on reliability of how often ambulances are getting out to respond. And there needs to be. Because why would we have somebody use 25%, 50%, 60%? I know we say, well, it's good enough, but it really isn't. Because it's creating a burden on a global system, and the system's not made globally yet. And there's going to be some growing pains as we go through this. But it's better than the alternative. It's better than just sitting around twiddling our thumbs not doing anything, which we've done for 20 years. Trying to identify issues, identify problems, and then offer solutions to fix those problems. And the sustainability white paper has identified a lot of those and created some of the performance metrics that are probably going to be used over the next couple of years as a starting point. So some of that work's been done already. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that? Other things in Part S, the EMS task force is something that stayed in there. Those for you that don't remember the EMS task force, these aren't the EMS districts that was originally proposed. These are separate. Basically, it's a readiness model that the state is going to pay for from agencies across the state. We felt the pain here in Niagara County, and Erie County, and Genesee County, Orleans County when we had the blizzard, right? Ask John how hard it was to try to get a resource within 12 hours to respond in here when agencies had trouble getting out or not able to respond at all. Trying to work through the state on that level, so much bureaucratic red tape, surveys have to go out, and by the time the resources are ready, we're out of the storm. So this model basically is looking to pay agencies to purchase 1 or 2 ambulances in times of disasters, so when they need to quickly deploy them, they can call them, put them on standby, and then quickly deploy them within hours and not days. That's kind of the mindset behind it. I don't know essentially how it's going to work because there's other things in there that the state can kind of do on their own, but that's, talking to the Director Greenberg, that's kind of his vision for the EMS task force. The regulatory packets that went out for education and operations related to equipment and also training standards. The education is a little bit further behind than the equipment standards are. If those of you that remember, equipment standards were voted on and approved in 2019 to go to the commissioner for approval. That was before COVID. They still have not reached the commissioner's desk. They are like in the 3rd or 4th layer of where they need to be. However, they are probably gonna come out for public comment sometime between now and September. So when that comes out, please make sure we review that. The hard part is, these regulatory changes were best practices in 2019. I can already tell you, we've already started to review those already, and they're not even in effect, to try to talk about something for 2025 already, and trying to get the process going. The good news is that the current Bureau staff was able to familiarize themselves with how to more efficiently get regulatory changes through the process. They've taken notes and have created a manual on how to get them through sooner. So going forward, we probably won't see the delays that we have currently seen. But we hope to have these regulatory changes approved and in effect by 2024. And those of you that aren't familiar, the acting commissioner was affirmed in May and is now the current full-fledged commissioner of health, Dr. McDonald. There were 2 new education policies that were rolled out in May. This is very good news. CFR and EMT reimbursement has been increased for the first time in about 25 years. The last increase was in 1999. Mike, do you have the numbers off the top of your head for what they are for CFR or EMT?
I can pull them up right now.
That was one of the tasks the Finance Committee was looking at for this year. So the good news is that that was approved and is already in effect, I believe. Right?
Yes. Okay, funding policy. Course reimbursement rates, EMT original reimbursement went up to $800. And CFR original $250. And they didn't touch any of the advanced at all. And CMU was untouched.
So that's good news for our core sponsors. In addition, there are 4 new pilot programs to try to get people more involved into EMS, whether it be through career advancement to become a paramedic or to get them in the field. Obviously, we all see an increase in academy-style EMT programs across the state. For the most part, they've been met with a lot of success, and the state hopes to continue those on going forward. The state can also help set up an academy-style program for you to provide instructors for up to 40 students. So if anyone is interested in that. They've also created an Intro to Paramedicine refresher for EMT refreshers to talk about some of the responsibilities that a paramedic and skills that a paramedic uses and does at the end of EMT refreshers, hoping to gauge interest and roll those EMTs into the next paramedic program. They've also created an internship program where somebody who's interested in joining a ambulance corps or even a volunteer fire company can do a 12-hour internship. After doing the 12-hour internship, if they decide that it's something that interests them and they become a member, can sign up for an EMT course, and they will be considered sponsored by New York State and eligible for reimbursement, similar to what a member would be at that agency. So that's something new that's changed as well. PSI has created a group scheduling pilot. Basically, so now there are 12 core sponsors across the state that PSI is allowing the instructors to schedule their students instead of having the students sign up themselves. Is anybody locally doing that? Mike, do you know? ADA, so also too, as far as testing, students that are requesting an ADA accommodation can now actually get that for the New York State written, any New York State written exam. For the longest time, if you needed a reader, the state did not allow that. Now the state will allow that. However, you have to apply through the, you have to meet certain criteria set forth by the New York State Department of Health ADA department. So if you know of any students that are in need of that, or to create an ADA compliance, you can apply, and Mike should, if you have any other questions, Mike should be able to help kind of guide you through that process as well. Vital Signs is in October. It's moved back to Syracuse this year. Vital Signs is up and registrations are currently open. Those that have any suggestions to make Vital Signs better, please let us know. We will bring those concerns forward. Rural Task Force met in May. Hope to have meeting minutes out in September. The chairperson of that committee, Ann Smith, who was the chairperson, took his position with the state, so I don't know who's currently chairing that task force. Do you know, Mike, off the top of your head?
No.
All right. And then the EMS forums page that Mike sent out a few months ago is live. It continuously has updates periodically, making sure you go on there. The state has finally advanced to the 20th century where they're no longer accepting paper. Everything is pretty much going to be electronic going forward. You can find all those forms on the forums page from the Bureau. There's supposed to be a new form coming out on policy feedback. It was supposed to come out June 1st. I don't think it came out June 1st. So June 1st of sometime, maybe next year, 2025, 2026, at some point it'll come out. OHIP office came out and discussed an increase in Medicaid funding. So with this budget, they were able to secure an additional $36.4 million in Medicaid funding. What does that mean for us or anybody that bills for Medicaid? Those of you that are familiar with that and billing for Medicare, they are using now an RVU, which is a relative value unit for calls. There is a base rate for a BLS non-emergent of $195. So the lowest amount you'll get is $195. For a BLS emergent call, there will be an RVU assigned to it. There'll be a multiplier. That multiplier will be multiplied by the $195 and that will be your reimbursement. ALS, same thing, ALS 2, SCT, all of those will have a relative value unit assigned, multiplied by the 195, which will be reimbursement. For some areas, this is very good and welcome news. We haven't seen a Medicaid, this is a large Medicaid increase that will take effect July 1st of this year. And they anticipate it being around forever. So that is actually a good thing that Medicaid reimbursement will actually start to improve. There were 3 protocols that came through as second motions that were approved: a DNR MOLST, adult pediatric seizure, and pain management for adult pediatric. Those were all approved. They will be posted starting January in 2024 and will take effect in June of 2024. So going forward, any protocol changes that are approved and voted on will go in effect all together at the same time. So any protocol changes that will be approved in September's meeting will be posted in June for an effective date of June of 2024. Anything after January 1st that gets voted on will then wait the following year to be active. There are blood regs for air medical. They use a framework developed by the Bureau and stakeholders. Another topic of conversation is regional REMAX may require additional credentialing within the region, which our region currently has. New York State EMS Medical Director is still a work in progress. No update on there. And as of now, because we're out of respiratory season, hospital wait times and offload times have decreased, which is good news. We'll see what happens come September, October, and respiratory season starts to rear its ugly head if wait times start to increase from there. Education and training. There will be a new BLS practical skills exam that will come out. It's going to be more critical thinking based and scenario based. They're still working on finishing the instructor program. They're starting to pilot again in some areas. However, it's really not close yet, so my guess is the earliest we'll see that will be late 2024, early 2025. Finance has worked on the Medicaid rate increase, education fund increase. They've already started working on the 2024-2025 budget. Lastly, for finance, the Bureau has asked the Finance Committee to create a wage survey for EMS providers that will be sent out electronically. I know in our exec meeting that we had at the end of May, we had discussed parameters of that. The goal is hopefully that would be released in July at some point. make sure that all EMS providers respond to that, because we're trying to get an idea of what wages look like across New York State. Systems, there's a new tag group created for trauma triage guidelines. If anyone is interested, please let me know. I can put you in contact. The group is again working on policy 0606 related to CON actions. Work had been paused because CONs were part of the governor's budget, so there's no sense doing work on something that may change. So they're back doing work there. Obviously, they talked about system performance standards, and there was one CON action that was postponed until September. It was related to LVAC and increasing their territory. That was postponed because this bureau sent information out on Monday night for us to vote on it Tuesday. So we didn't feel it was prudent for us to only have less than 12 hours notice to review about 150 pages worth of documents and then make an informed decision on that. Legislative, mostly part S conversation. Safety, the main conversation for safety is lights and sirens reduction. I know I talked about this at the Niagara County EMS meeting, but regionally, I want you guys to start thinking about ways that we can reduce the use of lights and sirens. They do work sometimes, but the goal is to continuously try to reduce the need for lights and sirens. For the most part, you're not really saving any time for any emergencies less than 30 minutes. Anything over 30 minutes is where you start to see some drastic changes or improvement in response times. Anything less than that, you're not seeing anything. So that's going to be probably a performance metric going forward, the amount of times lights and sirens are used, and then measuring that up with the how many reportable incidents are related to the use of lights and sirens during response modes.
Andy, is there some sort of education that you guys are going to have out to the non-EMS governing agencies that request these specific red lights and sirens responses?
There will be. The goal, well, again, the goal is to try to use a EMD standard, whether that be APCO or NAMT.
Right.
Trying to come forward with one standard to say, Niagara County has it pretty well spelled out for agencies in Niagara County. You know, ALS priorities are lights and sirens. BLS priorities are, is the closest unit hot, everyone else goes cold, and BLS standard, everyone responds cold. Having that out there, whether the agency uses that or not will be one thing, but that will be one of those things we're going to start to try to track as we go forward. But there will be education that comes with it. I just don't know when that's going to happen. Quality metrics, there's a new QA/QI manual that will be coming out as soon as possible after final review. And that's all I have for my report. Does anyone have any questions? Next up is Treasurer's report. So I'll save Core. Core doesn't have a report yet because we're still working through some Grants Gateway issues and then trying to get us all on the bank statement. So we're working through that. Hopefully we'll have some resolution for September's meeting. Mike, road vacancy report.
Okay. I'm just going to go over some of the highlights here because I have some of the same information that we talked about. So I want to start out with credentialing for the REMAC. Just a reminder, agencies are due for submission on the 30th. We do have a half a dozen or so agencies that have submitted through the portal. Just a reminder that we don't take paper credentials anymore. It's all electronic. And the other thing too about this portal, if you're having problems with the portal, please get a hold of me. I've found that there are some agencies that we've sent all the instructions, we've talked them through some of the things, and yet they get stuck and they don't reach out until we reach out and say, hey, we've noticed no movement on the portal. It's tough for us because there's two of us monitoring the portal through the program agency, and we have over 200 companies on it. So, and the amount of emails coming in from all these companies is crazy, so we don't lay eyes on every single notification from the portal. So, we did send out group updating tools, so when you're putting in your provider's credentials and their skills, you can do it as a group. You don't have to do it individually, and doing it as a group, you can get it done with just a couple clicks. You can do everybody. So once again, if anybody has any questions on that, please reach out. I know there's going to be some bumps in the road. It's new for everybody, but those who have submitted and gone through the process after they've done it, they're like, yeah, this isn't that bad. So, electronic PCR data. I don't know if there's any, is there any ESO customers in here at all? Okay. Did you send somebody to the ESO meeting? Okay, thank God. Okay. So on Monday, June 18th, this past Monday, New York State also released a updated schematron. So if any of you are looking at your electronic PCRs and seeing a crap ton of validation errors, we're working our way through it. Some of the rules are being rewritten. They're doing research on the PCR vendor side of things, and we're just trying to get that all fixed. Some of the not values that weren't allowed before will be allowed in the future, but this is that progression toward 3.5. And 3.5, luckily, thank you to the data team, is going to reduce your workload by 25%. So that's good. But ESO's got a terribly bad problem with validation errors, and that was the whole premise of the meeting that's taking place as we speak with all of the ESO clients. But if you're seeing a spike right now with the changes in the validation, we know about it. We're running reports every day. We're reporting it to the state from the Western Regional site. And then we're also reaching out to the different vendors with their platforms to know, what's going on. And we can pin it down to the exact validation and how many times those validations are hitting from each vendor and to each agency. So the IGEL program, we do have a number of companies in the Big Lakes region that have applied and has been accepted into the IGEL program. Shawnee just put their application in, so we're waiting on their DOH approval to get started. For any agency that's currently enrolled in the program, if you're adding additional providers to the IGEL program, you can't just add them and say, okay, well, if you get a cardiac arrest, throw an IGEL in. Their educational information needs to be sent over to the Hudson Valley Regional EMS Council and then approved by New York State. So what happens is when these agencies are approved, New York State sends out the list that is given to the Hudson Valley Regional EMS Council. So when you complete your training, you report it, New York State approves your list, and they in return send you that approved list. So if you add somebody else to that project, you just have to send an update. Either you can send it to me and I'll take care of it, or send it directly to Hudson Valley. But unless they're on that list and verified that they've completed the training, they can't take part in the program, okay? So it's a very regulated program. HCS, we're still putting different agency leaders on the HCS program. Anybody interested in getting on that, please reach out. If you already have an agency coordinator, that coordinator in your agency can put you on the HCS system. Andy talked about the Bureau policies. Muru app. I don't know if anybody here has been real active on the Muru app, but there's been a few updates to the Muru app, and this happened in the beginning of May. So any of our hospital systems in the Big Lakes and Wyoming Erie regions the call button, when you go into the hospital list, will call medical control. Previous to that, either A, it wasn't working at all, or B, it would call the general hospital number. Now, 99% of the time, if we're calling a hospital, we want medical control. So, now I'll caution you, if you go to Rochester for some reason,
Because that's where we go.
the app is not gonna work the same. Okay? So that call button might not be medical control for a Rochester hospital. But anything in our 2 regions, it will contact the medical control number. I'm gonna caution you on ECMC. If you have a trauma going to ECMC, that main number is the medical control number, not the trauma hotline. So when you select ECMC and you scroll a little bit, you'll see the trauma hotline on there. Muru did not have the capacity to put both numbers right up there in the heading. It's something that they're investigating, something that may come in the future. A reminder of the BLS recertifications. We have caught a lot of expired BLS agencies over the last couple months. That becomes a problem if your BLS agency takes part in the CME research program. You can lose that program. So I've been trying to jump in there, and once again, between both regions, there's a lot of BLSFRs. But if you need help with that, get a hold of me. If you know an agency that needs help with that, get a hold of me. Like Andy said, everything's done through the portal. I've had a couple agencies already just send me all their paperwork and say, here you go, recertify us. It's not how it works. You actually got to do it all on the portal. Andy mentioned the Vital Signs Conference. Very last thing that I have is the REMAC approved a new medication and equipment vocabulary today. The plus side is some of the ALS supplies and stuff has been relaxed a little bit. Like, you don't need like 4 of every size angio if you're a low volume company. But once again, it's a minimum standard that they passed. So make your adjustments based on your call volume. That's it. Oh, yeah, UBMD's moving offices again. So the EMS division is going to be moving probably in the next month and a half. We're just moving over 1 suite. So instead of 420, it's going to be suite 430.
Any other questions for Mike? Perfect.
One last thing about the Muru app too, don't forget that the NAC will not be in the Muru app. So any of you guys that are transporting to the facility on Transit Road for Catholic Health, we are not in the Muru app. So if you call the BNH one, you're not gonna get us.
It's a beautiful segue. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, no, that's okay. So, Saturday night into Sunday we opened. It went pretty well. We started with a little bit of hiccup with no CT, but I know I got that information. I know between Rachel and I, we got that out to Niagara County. I spoke to Wendy and I spoke to Mark a couple times throughout the weekend. I talked to your folks at Twin City, Mercy as well. And then we let AMR know, not that they're gonna be up there, but we let them know as well. So all the major players were notified, like the county dispatch knew. Also that was updated, and I think I've mentioned it at most of the meetings. For those of you who are on Pulsera, when you select the hospital, there is an actual status update on the hospital. So we had that marked in there that CT was down. Right now, St. Joe's, I think our ultrasound is down till, I think it's at 9 o'clock tonight. So we're, constantly updating that as best we can. But if you're on the Pulsar app and you select the hospital, that's the destination hospital, you'll be able to see whether it's green or yellow or red, or there's a big exclamation point with another one, and then there's usually some sort of update as appropriate. The folks, the nurses at the NAC said that the folks that have transported there have been super understanding about what we've got going on. We've had, I think, 3 or 4 transfers over the last couple days out, which have been pretty good. Our apologies to Tri-Community for calling you, for our agency nurses calling you because they thought you could transfer. But, so we fixed that. They now know to call Mercy directly for transfers, and then Twin City as the secondary, and so on down the road. For entry into the building, the man door on the north side of the building is the entry. That hasn't changed. We've created a lane, for lack of a better term, for the ambulances to pull up. It is tight for the box ambulances. It's tight. It was done in conjunction with Rapids and South Lockport, so if those guys said they could fit through, short of you guys bringing in a tractor trailer or something, we should be okay. So you are aware, South Lockport and Rapids also requested that we set it up so entry into that be from Transit Road. I know you guys, there's a way to come through the back way and cut through, but both South Lockport and Rapids said that for fire purposes and for getting their fire apparatus through, that we use the Transit Road option. And what they did was they put a plastic chain on the end, on the east end of that lane, so you'll just have to get out and take the chain off when you leave. Otherwise, it's been good. The only other thing I can tell you is, just like with ENH, pre-notify for as much as you can. And I know we usually say just time-sensitive emergencies, but for that facility, because of its size, even if it's just, you know, the flu or a couple stitches or whatever, it's tight quarters. So if you can pre-notify for everything while you get there. But like I said, otherwise we haven't had any issues that I've been made aware of until we were in. So it's been good.
Sounds good, thank you. Anybody, anything for Scott or Rachel? Perfect. The Department of Health Bureau staff is on company-wide training. I don't know what they're doing, but they're not here and they didn't have anything to report. Committee reports, CON. Rick, do you have anything?
No report.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll talk about the awards. Before we move on to that and have Sarah talk, I want to thank Sarah for her time and effort putting our first awards dinner into motion, and thought it was met with very good success. So thank you, Sarah, for all of that. It's great. One of the things that we're going to ask going forward is Sarah's decided to chair the committee again for next year. But Sarah's going to look for help. So those of you that are interested in the awards dinner committee, please reach out to Sarah. We'll have a sign-up sheet for our next meeting. Please reach out to her. That way she doesn't have to take on that whole burden herself. So Sarah, do you have anything you want to talk or add?
I do appreciate feedback. I prefer positive, but negative works too. So please, if you attended, you heard about it, there was something you liked, something you didn't like, please give me that feedback so we can make next year's awards dinner even better.
Alright, thank you. Medical director report. Dr. Lynch wasn't able to make it. However, Dr. Lynch, who's been our CMAC rep for the last few years, emailed me after confirming him in March's meeting that he's looking to step back from that position. And so we will be in need of a new CMAC representative. Word on the street is Dr. Seth would be interested in being Big Lakes regional CMAC representative. For that to happen, I will need a motion off the floor to nominate Dr. Seth as our CMAC rep. First by Steve, do you have a second? Second by John. On the question?
Thank you.
If he's interested and good at what he does, we're all set.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Can't abstain from that. You already said you'd do it. So what does this mean? So basically, I will write a letter to Secretary Val Osga at BEMS, stating that Josh is looking to resign his position or relinquish his spot as a CMAC representative. We will send a letter recommending and affirming our vote here tonight for Dr. Seth along with his CV. And then Dr. Seth will have to go through the vetting process. I don't know how long the vetting process will take. I think it took Lynch like 2 years.
Yeah.
So I will try to push a little bit sooner. In the interim, Dr. Lynch is still the CMAC rep and I'm still eligible to vote. So I will, as we work through that, I will try to push the state to do this as expeditiously as possible. So thank you, Dr. Seth. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah.
Thank you for the punch. New business. Next CMAX REMSCO meeting will be held September 12th and 13th in the beautiful city of Troy, New York. It's actually very nice that time of year. So if anybody's interested and has the time, why don't you head on out there and see what happens at the state meetings. It's very interesting. It's kind of hard to believe, but our MOU, our original MOU that we signed with UBMD last year is up, and we will need to sign a new MOU for July 1st through June 30th of 2025, or 2024. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So I reviewed it. I gave it to executive team. There was no substantial changes on there. The only thing that they added on was fees for our website maintenance that Mike has so graciously taken on. I don't think any value has changed. We have the EMS portal on there, which was on there before. With no changes, I'd like to take a motion for us to move forward with the MOU for 2023 to 2024 with UBMD. Let me make a motion.
I will.
All right. Can you say that motion?
I know that we approve the, memorandum of understanding.
Perfect, thank you. Do I have a second? Sure, thank you. All right. All in favor? Raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
You,
I get paid by BMD.
One of the things, I have one more thing and then we'll open it up to the floor and then we're gonna get out here before 8 o'clock. So last thing I would like to mention, or I wanted to gauge interest in the body, is our next meeting is in September, right? I'm wondering if anybody is interested in moving the meeting time up from 1900 to 1800.
Today?
It'd be September 20th. As we start to look at time commitments and stuff like that, I know sometimes we get home and then we don't want to come back out to a meeting after that. So this would just be a trial thing. We could trial it and see if it works or see if we like it, especially in the summer months, because I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really want to come here at 7 o'clock tonight. I don't know if anybody else did. I don't think many other faces did either, so maybe starting it an hour early at 1800 might be in our best interest to at least try it out and see how it goes. Any feelings or thoughts? Do we want to try that out?
Is that when Genesee coming?
It is, yeah.
Could we get the agendas out early? So there's like
Yeah.
some talking pieces, like how REMAC does it ahead of time, maybe a little earlier than that.
Yeah.
So that way we've got a good idea what's gonna go on, and like all the paperwork that's set out, there's no reason to read through all the different reports, we can read that ahead of time. Everybody's got their attachments, I understand there was some computer issues tonight, whatever.
Yeah.
But if we can get that cuts down 15, 20 minutes, we can get out now.
Sure. We can do that.
Sounds good, thank you.
Just to be on the safe side, if anybody's interested in 1800, can I get a motion to start at 1800?
Motion to start the next meeting on September the 20th at 18.
Second.
Perfect, second. On the question? All in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Perfect, motion carries. So we'll trial it, we'll see if we like it, and if we like it, we'll try it again in November's meeting. The last thing I have, just wanna confirm, I have one more thing, sorry. Just affirm on our meeting minutes that, we're gonna go to the bank and put the executive committee on the bank statements, or attempt to do that. Just so I wanted it on the meeting minutes, so that we have that. Can I just get a motion for us to do that?
I'll make the motion.
All right, Steve, go ahead.
We get the executive team on the current bank records, it's gonna involve the bank owner, which is myself. And that'll allow them to carry on business as
Can I
they should.
get a second? Oh, yes, Chris, I'm having a stroke today, sorry. All in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstention? Perfect, motion carries. All right. Next meeting, September 20th, will be in Genesee County. It will probably be at the Fire Training Center. Once we get that confirmed, we'll get that out. We'll get the meeting minutes out for March. We'll get the meeting minutes out for this meeting. Lastly, I want everyone to have a wonderful summer. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy the weather. Have fun. We'll see you guys in September. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
So perfect. We don't need a second for that, so we can just end. Thank you. Everyone have a good night.
I'll be out of town for September.
Okay.
I'll see if Troy's gonna be here for that one. He should be.